What's up, everybody? So we're back out in the shop with another daily vlog, and in this episode we are going to be attaching the handle scales to the old 5160 post-apocalyptic-ish knuckle dusting cleaver thing. It's a very long name for a knife. Very long name. So the goal is to get the handle scales attached today. The scales we're going to be using are some nice, sleek, simple, olive drab G10. We're going to be using black micarta pins so that we have just a nice, subtle looking set of scales on it so that the knife itself speaks volumes about it instead of having some crazy gaudy scales on this knife. Now, I am going to leave something up to y'all, whether I should make the scales profile just nice and smooth or if I should do a texture. So, you know, nice and smooth like this right here, which do look pretty cool whenever you're using G10 and micarta and stuff like that. Or do you think that I should do an actual set of textured scales like this right here, which I can do a lot of that after the scales are attached? I don't have to do any of that prior. So you let me know in the comment section down below which one you think I should do on this, and I will try that out. Now, for this episode, really all we got to focus on is getting the scales marked up, making sure that the surfaces are all prepped, you know, drill holes in them, cut them out, do all that stuff, work on the areas that are going to meet the ricasso area right here and this little area right here, because you're going to have exposed scale, like the face of it right here, you're going to have that exposed on this side and this side. So I've got to prep both of those. I won't be able to work on those after the actual, you know, attaching process because we risk messing up our finish on our knife. So we got to do those things before we can start texturing them tomorrow. So we'll see how this goes. Let's go ahead and jump into this episode and start working on these scales. So first things first, we need to go ahead and attach these scales together so that we're not having to mess with them shifting or anything like that. We're going to get them squared up, put them on a piece of tape. Y'all have seen me do this in multiple videos, although I still have people that ask how I keep them together while I'm working on them. It's purely just using a piece of tape, cutting off the excess. Now you got yourself a little book. And they stay exactly where they're supposed to be. They're nice and flush on all the sides. And now I can pretty much work with them without having to worry about them going anywhere. So the goal for this is to get everything put together so that I can then mark it. But I need to kind of figure out where I want the scales to be positioned. And the easiest way to figure this out is to figure out with the spine where I want them to be, because then I can draw wherever I want it to come into the belly. But the big thing is where they land on the spine. I think that I'm going to go right about here, primarily because I want them to be just a bit longer than necessary for this area back here where this peak comes up and meets. So right there where that peak is, I would like for them to start a little bit past it. So that right there is basically where they're going to end up. You can see it drops down just a hair right here. Now all I need to do is kind of draw and connect where I want them to end. So about like that right there. So now we can actually go ahead and clamp everything together. One of the best parts about marking everything is it makes it real easy to get the pieces matched back up if something shifts. So now that we have it cut out, all I need to do is finish the front and rear of this. So the area where it's going to meet the back of the tang and the ricasso itself, we need to get them nice and finished. So we're going to finish profiling them and then go over to the vise and hand sand them. I'm not going to be putting any bevels on this or anything like that. They're just going to be nice and square because they're very, they're only a quarter of an inch thick. There's no real need to start beveling these particular pieces. After we get done shaping the scales, they're going to be pretty minimal as it is. So no real need to put in all that extra work for something that's unnecessary on this particular knife. So now we'll go ahead and mix our 2-part epoxy. This is just JB Weld 2-part epoxy. Nothing fancy. I know a lot of people keep asking me, hey man, when are you gonna go with something like a G-Flex or one of those? Because I had mentioned one time that I was gonna do that. Well, I have not run out of this stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna keep using this until I end up running out. I was given a couple more of them, and yeah, whenever those run out, I'll go ahead and order G-Flex, but I haven't seen the need to do it just yet. My little JB Weld stuff works just fine for what I'm doing right now, so that's what we're going to keep going with for the time being. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to coat every single piece. I say this each time, but just in case y'all are forgetting, you coat every single piece before you go ahead and start putting it together. There's no reason to try and work your way around pins and all that stuff by doing them as you stack them. We'll also put epoxy in the actual holes where the pins are going to go, so that as we push our pins through, they get epoxy on them and they create that bond in the actual pinhole itself. And then I just drilled these extra little holes here for just areas for epoxy to sit to give us as much of a bond as possible. Plus I sanded the actual sides here so that this epoxy had something to bite onto. You want to give it the best chance at a bond as possible. I like to remove a lot of the excess epoxy so that I don't have to deal with grinding through it later. Just makes your life a little bit easier. There we go. Now what we'll end up doing is getting some acetone and putting it on a little paper towel, wiping the excess that squeezed out in the ricasso area and the back area. Alright guys, let's go ahead and wrap this daily vlog up here with some of this. All the clamps on there and all that stuff. So one of the things that I do is just make sure we have the least amount of work possible. I do have very little tolerances on here, so when it boils down to it, I don't have to shave a whole bunch of handle scale material off or anything like that. I want to like save the most amount of time possible on this, so I trim the scales typically pretty close to where they need to be going on, and then we make sure that we don't have any gaps or any unsightly things. Now with this particular one, you would see a couple of little pieces, but that's just because the forge texture goes all the way through the tang, so you could see a couple of little spots where it might look like there's a gap, but really that's just from a hammer strike from the actual texture itself. But surprisingly enough, there really is hardly any. I tried not to do much texture right there, but I wanted it to follow through the front of the ricasso area going into the scales and the back area coming off of the scales. So I wanted that texture all the way through here as well. So, you know, I'm not that worried about there being, you know, zero tolerances here because there's forge texture, you know, that's the whole point behind this particular one. So it is what it is. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to try my hardest to make it look absolutely awesome. You know, you don't skimp on a really cool knife. You go above and beyond. That's the whole point behind this. Now, in the next episode, we're going to be focusing on shaping this particular handle, which is going to be fun because I've never shaped a handle where the belly was protected by a guard. So it's going to be fun. I'm going to be doing some shaping inside here and just making sure that I don't mess up this at all because that already has its finish on it. So we're just going to have to be pretty careful there. It's going to be pretty cool. I'm excited to see whether y'all pick for me to do the whole rock textured scales or just a nice sleek scales. Either way, that's the way I will go. Guys, I hope y'all have a very Merry Christmas, and if you would, give this video a thumbs up, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Y'all have an amazing day. Again, have a Merry Christmas, and I will see y'all tomorrow.